Thanks so much for joining me today for REMgm on Twitter. I love that name. And then we found out that you got kind of quasi doxxed when you joined a new team. We'll talk about that after. So Rem, I think I'm still going to call you Rem because I'm pretty sure that's probably what everybody calls you, right? But thanks for joining me today, man. I appreciate it. You kind of came on short notice as well. You're definitely somebody I was hoping to have on a future episode at some point, just a little sooner than I was expecting. But I know you got a lot of exciting things going on, kind of IRL in Web3. Obviously, folks listening to this, we have a huge support from kind of the Rebels community. So they're going to know who you are. But we have a lot of new people joining us every week as we kind of grow as a new podcast. So can you just give us a quick little intro of kind of who you are, what you've been up to, and what it means to be Rem?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. Yeah, so let me just start with yeah. So my name is Rem. Real life, my name is Rem Co. So that's basically how I also got to my name. I didn't want to make it too difficult because yeah, even though we're sort of hidden in Web3, I think real life and Web3 should mix a little bit more together. And I was right, I think, because as soon as I got into Web3 and I started joining the communities, especially Rebels and Psychedelic Anonymous, like, yeah, I met a lot of people, and like we're talking, and all the guys and girls in our communities, we got an acquaintance so fast, and we're supporting each other, and helping each other be more creative and all of that. So yeah, I just didn't want to hide behind some funky name, and just be myself here. So in real life, I work at this company called Media.Monks. I run their Web2, and Web3 business um, across the world. So we got about 300 people working in my team, building cool websites, digital ecosystems, and all that stuff. And also working with our Web3 teams there, and bridging our Web2 clients to Web3. So that's what I do on a daily basis. And yeah, in Web3, I just basically use it to, be more creative, and use it as a sort of a creative outlet. And that's been going pretty well so far.
Yeah, and I think for me, my first introduction where I started seeing you obviously was on the Rebels project, Rebels by Night. By Night, for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, and you were doing a lot of really cool art, kind of inspired by and the project, and then you've kind of went your own way with really leading what we call our bucket head. A bucket hat group, sorry. So it's that's become its own thing. It was kind of a chat for a while. It's obviously a Twitter page, and it's sort of a faction of the Rebels. And I find there's a ton of really artistic folks there. So I think starting to find your tribe with that group, and you've done a lot of really cool art, and you're doing a lot of really cool art currently that I've always enjoyed. Have you really only been doing art like on the AI side, or were you always kind of into the traditional side of art? Like, what's your background like on that creative side?
Yeah, so on a creative side, so before I even joined this company that I work at now, I had a sort of digital innovation agency for over 10 years. It was just like a small agency, so I had to do a lot myself. So I basically also, next to the business side, which I really love, I also always love to do the creative side. So I basically leaned into creating apps, augmented reality, virtual reality. So I also did a lot of visualization, UX, and all of that stuff there. Sort of realized, I can do a lot, but I'm really not a good designer or a good creative. But to that sense, yeah, so I always had um, that ambition to do more with the creative side of things. On the other hand, so when I started out in Web3, or basically more the NFT side of Web3, because before I did a lot of trading in crypto, like most of us. And then I sort of started exploring communities, and the communities were so dope. There were so many creatives in there that really didn't have any boundaries of doing stuff. But I also saw a lot of people that wanted to do stuff, but sort of felt, might be a little bit awkward when you do something and then you publish it, and then people have opinions about it and stuff like that. And basically, when I was joining Rebels, and actually, I heard Nas on another project that I was on, Meth Army, and Meth Army was about more coders and technical guys, and they were sort of stimulated participating and using their code and asking questions and stuff like that, and they didn't have any how do you say that, boundaries, or didn't feel awkward asking the questions. When I heard Nas talking about Rebels, I thought like, wow, this is cool because that's the creative side of things, right? Um, and then when I joined Rebels, I actually found, like the communities, and we started to gather around, and we sort of, I think it was Max and Harley. I don't know for sure if it was them, but they started this Buckethead Gang Twitter account, and we got into the DMs and everything. And then pretty soon, everybody there was, I saw a lot of creative people in there. And thought, like, how cool would it be if we sort of come together and help each other sort of be a little bit more creative and help each other publish things. And so that's sort of how it started, like you just said, like finding your tribe. That's what we basically did with Rebels. And that's why I started experimenting a little bit more and trying to get more people also to experiment with creations. And basically, if you talk to all of the people in the Buckethead Gang, you find people that do other things in their daily lives, but are really really great illustrators, um, movie editors or video editors, um, people who are musicians that like you wouldn't necessarily get that while you're talking about NFTs online. But within the community, we found a way to talk about that and to sort of push and yeah, stimulate each other to make little creations. And yeah, I think that's sort of how it came to this.
Yeah, and I think, in the mainstream now we're seeing a lot of AI stuff, right? Chat GPT, and we're seeing Mid Journey, all that kind of stuff. I have friends talking about it now, but we were talking about that a year ago. I feel like with the Rebels, and it's this group of creators that are excited to try new things, and I think like to me what our community as Rebels really gave me, and I think a lot of people, was almost like that permission to just go for it, right? To just try. Like Nas is always the first guy to, you start talking about, oh, it'd be cool if someone did this, or I was thinking about doing this, he's the first guy to be like, do it then, like you should do it. Like he's always so really supportive. And I think some people just needed that push, and it's good to have a community that I think most folks are gonna kind of going to gather around anything that anyone from our community creates. Everyone tries to support, right? Rather, as simple as just, a like and a retweet or a comment or something, like, that's helping out, right? That's helping getting the word out, even if maybe it's not something you're directly, interested in. But most of the time everyone jumps in, and I, that's a really great vibe that I personally wasn't getting from, the quote unquote communities on the crypto side, when it was just tokens and stuff like that, right? Like I was like you, where I started off trading, and there wasn't really a community. It was a community of people waiting for the price to go up, and then everyone trying to rush to sell before everyone else, right? Like for most of those smaller projects, especially during that, that boom of the bull market, like it didn't really feel like everyone was there for genuine reasons. And there was a lot of really cool projects being made and stuff like that, but you don't have that same sense of community that you do have with on the NFT side. And I think because most people are there, because especially if it's not a brand new project or something, they're there for the art, they're there for the community, they have some sort of real connection with what's going on. And that's why I think that a lot of us really, Rebels was a great genesis point of all these different things that we're doing now. So I find what you're doing, IRL, for lack of a better term, really interesting. And I was hoping to dive in a little bit about like how did you go from, you said you were kind of doing your own thing for about 10 years, and now you're with Media.Monks. How did you end up finding your way to them, and sort of what sort of things, so you're connecting web 2 and web 3, so what does that look like when you're partnered with one of their companies?
Yeah, so maybe just get a little bit more personal, like funny story. Um, I have a creative background, right? So I come from advertising agencies, all that stuff, and like when you run your own agency and you come from a creative side, like that's all basically all your whole passion that you're doing like there like 24/7. Then at some point, like I decided I wanted to work with bigger brands, right? Because when you run your own small agency, you sort of at some point find that not all doors open anymore, right? So you don't have access to the biggest brands anymore. So I started, I actually joined a big tech company, and I won't know the name, but like people who will reverse engineer who I am, sort of figure it out. But it's basically I ended up in a consultancy company, and at some point I was, you know, business was going good, but I really don't care hanging out with consultants. And I was sort of in France in Cannes, like the Cannes Lions, and I ended up at this massive party, which was insane, crazy, creative people there, and it basically was hosted by Media.Monks. And I actually knew one of the founders from way back, and I saw them, and it's like, oh, dude, I really need to get back into this game because these guys are going to do some really cool things. And then so when I got back, I texted one of the founders and I said like, hey man, like, it's been a while. I think you guys are doing some really cool stuff. This is what I'm doing right now, and we should talk. We talked, and then I think 2, 3 weeks later, we agreed that I would join their company. And that's basically how it went. And then at that point, the company was 800 people, just sold to into this bigger other big company S4, and we now 4 years later we're now about 10,000 people, and I run sort of one part of their business. It's called platforms and e-commerce. So what we basically do is build bigger digital ecosystems, but also more on the creative parts of the business. So we work for companies like McLaren, Spotify, um, Starbucks, like those types of companies. We deliver their web and app side of things. But on the other hand, like we also started to bridge companies to Web 2 or to Web 3. And so I don't know, yeah, I can talk about it. So we basically also built the Gucci Vault, the Web 3 side of things. We just launched a project for Mogler that minted out on OpenSea, and we did the activation for Cool Cats at NFC New York, or NFT New York. Yeah, so we basically do a lot of stuff. Um, if someone's interested, just look on the website. You find a lot of cool things. Um, and that's basically what I do. But there, I'm not a creative. There, I run
Hmm.
the business side of things. So basically, all the commercials, make sure that the teams can expand, and yeah, basically expand their business.
And so you're pretty much going from both sides of the fence there. So you have some Web 2 companies who you're kind of, I guess, bringing Web 3 to them. And then you do have some Web 3 companies who you're kind of helping cross that barrier into some more, in real life kind of Web 2 like activities than like with those real life events and stuff like that. So that's interesting. So you're kind of bridging that gap both ways with some of those clients then.
Yeah, so we actually have a lot of talented Web3 artists also working for us and Web3 strategists. So it's not me personally always sort of pushing the buttons, but we have a lot of people deep within the communities, and we really feel that if you want to advise companies to come to Web3, or at least on a strategy level, think about how to do that, because like you can do it in terms of promotion and stuff like that, but really knowing what Web3 is about and what the audience is about, and what we as Web3, I guess I can call us Web3 natives by now. What actually us, who are designing the Web3 space expect from brands, you really need people that are in the space. And so that's also where we got our credibility by working with these Web3 brands, because they know that we really understand what they are about. Um, And that helps also, of course, while talking to Web2 brands, that they know that you're actually working for these Web3 brands.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that for Web 2 companies, there is some hesitancy if they're not really well versed in the Web 3 side of things, right? Like you start to hear a lot of companies hear the word crypto or NFTs or any of these things, and they might not always have a positive connotation immediately. And we know that Web 3, due to the fact that it is so open, you get the good with the bad, right? So it's very intimidating, I think, for especially established companies to take their first voyage into this space because it's like if you left your front door open at home, like people are going to walk in and you might meet some really cool people and you might have some people stealing your stuff, right? Like and that's Web3, right? Like that's we get a little bit of everything. So it's I think these companies definitely need someone to take them on that journey, connect them with the right people to build those experiences that they're looking to build. And I know, as many of people in this space, we've seen a lot of those web companies kind of enter Web 3, and we've seen some really successful, great campaigns and some great projects and things come from that. But we've also seen some really out of touch stuff that's just like you said, the Web3 native community, the people who have been here are just looking at some of these companies coming in and going like, what are they doing? Like they have no idea how the space works. And like, and then it doesn't work out. Right. Or they end up having to kind of use company funds to sort of, band-aid the situation and look and make it a little less, of a failure, really, right? Like we've seen a couple big ones recently. I'm not going to name names because it's if you're in the space, you've seen it happen, and you've seen the good ones too, right? And I think that that's a really interesting space. I've talked to a lot of people in the space who are looking at how do I start connecting this Web3 life and this Web3 experience, to what I'm doing in the real world. And like, people are really interested in working in this space. And that's why I was really interested to talk to you because, you're kind of blend. That's two spaces are kind of becoming one for you, I think, as time goes on. Right.
Yeah, I think so. Basically, the most fundamental question that we're asking our clients right now when they come to us with this, and let's say they're at maturity stage one, if you could sort of plot them into maturity stages. So maturity stage one would basically mean like I don't know anything about it, but I'm super interested. Maturity stage, let's say 3 or 4, would be like I know it. Already know how to handle and manage crypto wallets and digital assets in that space within my company. And I've actually evolved my company into an agile company, and I know that Web3 and the audiences there are part of my marketing strategy, right? So especially Web3 curious brands, first, we try to explain to them that it is about turning your whole marketing perspective from talking to your audience to talking to your community. And that is such a fundamental step that when you're a mature marketeer, you'll understand when I tell you this that it is not a campaign.
Mhm.
Because when you go from audience where you can broadcast to community where you actually have conversations with your audience and start learning from them and start to interact with them, on the good and the bad stuff, because it's sometimes hard to interact with your community on a daily basis, and especially people who are in Web3 right now have super high expectations. That requires a different strategy, and it requires a different way of opening up and letting your community get close to your brand. And yeah, so the hard conversations usually start there, but because the technical conversations of like, can you help me create an NFT collection? Yeah, that's easy, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that back and forth is what they're not used to in the Web 2 world, right? Like, large company can buy a bunch of billboards and commercials online or on television, and they kind of will say, how did that campaign do? Well, sales were up 10%. Great, it was a successful campaign, right? Or not, and that's really it, right? They're not getting that true response. Whereas, as we know in these communities, people are not afraid to be vocal. So that's definitely an entirely new kind of frontier for a lot of these companies to manage for sure. And I'm sure what you're selling, into them as the huge plus side of this type of interaction, where you have a community, is once that community is on your side, and we've seen this, in many projects as well, then they are your advocates, right? You're actually having an entire community now pulling in the same direction as you. It's not just your company anymore, right? Then, and I think that's obviously the hook, right? I'm sure that's a lot of what you're talking about with them, is how, once we have a community that's aligned with the goals, that, now we have people who are not even part of your company, who are going to be advocating for your brand or your product or whatever they make or sell.
Yeah, and that goes on so many different levels, right? So when you talk about, let's say, my core business, like platforms and e-commerce, so it's basically helping companies build their digital business for the future. Um, and that's pretty fundamental, because when you get close to a company and help build their digital business, if they're not a digital first company, so it might be, so like an Amazon is a digital first tech company, right? So everything that's built from the core of Amazon is already for that digital audience. But there's a lot of companies that maybe sell paint, or maybe sell cars, like McLaren, or maybe sell, I don't know, like houses, or real estate projects. Like, digital is not native to them. So what we're doing is we're helping them build those owned digital channels first. And then on top of that, of course, you also have your social layer, and you have your commercial marketing layer, and your sales layer, and maybe your event spaces and all of that. And that all needs to be interconnected in a way that it services as, um, let's say, digital touch points for individual journeys of the audience. And I don't know if I get too marketing blah blah here, but basically journeys as we would know them in Web 2 were very very linear, right? They were very standard. Like, you see the billboard, then you'll be seeing the repeat on TV, and you'll see a couple of print ads, and then you buy the product. That's like a linear traditional marketing funnel. These days, with all of the digital touch points that we get, we actually feel as customers, or as community members, that we have to interact, or we have to sort of get value from each digital touch point. So we don't accept messages the way that we used to, right? Because we feel that if we see that message on social, it needs to do something for me, because I'm not just watching it. It needs to sort of, allow me to do something. When I'm in the vicinity of a store and I get an ad, or I see it on social when I'm near the store, I need to sort of be actioned to get something back from that. So the digital journeys of us as customers have become so complex that if you then connect Web3 to that, you add a whole lot new layer of complexity on top of that. And like, also us, like, we haven't figured it out 100%, right? But we can go on this exploration with our clients to see what this would mean for them in the near future. So yeah, that's basically what we do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm super interested in this stuff. So yeah, you can't go too deep for me, and I know we're gonna have audience members that are more or less interested, and but for me, this is exciting to hear about someone who's out there doing this. And yeah, you think about, even in the last few, 10 years, 10, 15 years, at least where I am, like, we still had a lot of larger companies that were doing like print ads and flyers and things like that, right? Which, like you said, there's not really anything beyond just, okay, I see it says Nike, I see Just Do It, there's a picture of a shoe, that's all the information I have, right? But now even something as simple as having a digital ad on the side of your YouTube video, now I can click that, it can bring me to a website where I can have an experience. Like, that's already so much more than it was 10 years ago, right? Or 15 years ago. And then now I think that this Web3 is the next step, where we're really having this experiential this journey now with products and with companies and with brands, right? And it's really really interesting for me, at least. And I'm curious, is there any kind of tech that's emerging now? Maybe AI and some other things. Is there anything that you're really excited about that you've been digging into, or is it just the AI stuff that you've been really? I know you're all over it from the art stuff, so just from what I've seen.
No, yeah. So like every company, of course, everybody's trying to figure out what AI can actually do for them, and we've been working on um, machine learning algorithms and trying to figure out what AI does for logistics and improvement of reading data sets because we have a pretty big data practice, and in all sorts of angles throughout the whole process of helping marketing and digital businesses. So definitely that, and the visual side of things where everybody gets excited about is of course chat GPT and more the mid journey kind of things because it's visual, right? And it's available for everybody and everybody can play around with it. But I think even in the web 2 space, what is more interesting there is that everybody's sort of also looking for interoperability, right? How can we make sure that everything connects and talks to each other, and I'm at the center of that as a person? And there's a lot of good technical stuff going on there because I think like web 3 has its challenges, like web 2 has, I think, the challenges amplified to that because it has a lot of legacy, and that whole legacy, web 3 doesn't carry that legacy. Yes, it does carry some legacy, but it's all communities and bigger groups that are helping improving that. And in web 2 space you don't really see that except for the bigger partners that we work with, like Adobe and Salesforce and AWS, like those types of companies. They are creating these bridges between all of those platforms to work with each other. Also, we just announced our partnership with Salesforce, the Web3 studio, which was pretty excited that I could finally talk about it because I've been working with the teams and for over a year now to get this off the ground. And that's interesting because Salesforce has now created this space, like a module that you can sort of plug on top of their CRM system or on top of their Experience Cloud, that allows bigger companies like big enterprise companies to step into the Web3 space without all the hassle of jumping through all the legal hoops and all difficulties that they will be facing there. And they're also sort of enabled to connect that into their CRM system, which is massively interesting because that's where you bridge it to the bigger audiences. Like Web3 maxis might not like that, but basically you want to enable Web3, how do you say that? Let's see, the core of why we're in Web3, the participation and all of that, and the ownership. That's what you want to enable to a bigger audience. And that can only happen when you do that through controlled systems like this. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how we can work together on that front to unlock more good stuff that comes from Web3 into the Web2 audiences.
Yeah, and I think this came up a little bit last episode of NOS is like, if we really want mass adoption, there's going to be, some concessions that have to be made as far as the decentralized and sort of the anonymous side of things, right? And large companies are not going to jump in without being able to have their, their T's crossed, their I's dotted legally, especially, right? And I think that that is the next step as far as these companies are begun. We're not going to see a company like you said, like you were talking about Montclair, you're talking about McLaren, Starbucks. These are huge companies with huge reputations to protect as well, right? And I think that I think that if we want mass adoption, we're going to have to give up some of that
for the most of it, right? Like you'll make a distinction. Like you won't connect your maybe your anonymous Web3 identity to these things, but there's like basically the average person has 2 to 3 email addresses that they connect their stuff to, right? Maybe even more. So you already sort of make that segregation there into what you do and what you don't like. Like even if you like, even your credit card is like a massive loyalty system, right? And that's also their identifying yourself in that space allows you to get more benefits, and nobody has any problem with that. At least when they get extra rewarded and points in that side. So yes, I get it that everybody sort of wants to build on that decentralized side of things, and I'm a real big believer in that. I think I'm really rooting to push that forward. But on the other end, that's not the space where you onboard the next 2 billion people.
People are kind of using the word decentralized and the word anonymous, synonymously, but they're not, right? They're two different things. So, decentralized doesn't mean anonymous necessarily, right? Like you're someone who's now, like you said, you're sort of doxed now as being part of the Evolve team. So you're not anonymous, but you're definitely still decentralized as far as the whole project is running on a decentralized platform. So I think that that's where
My
people get confused.
network on LinkedIn is like 10 times the size of my network on Twitter. So like I can pretend, like, oh, I'm this anonymous person, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess I haven't talked to a lot of people on their real own Web 2, or let's say their normal lives business. But a lot of us, we are part of bigger companies, and it's not that I'm doing anything illegal or crazy in Web 3. So like basically, I don't care about being doxxed. It's just that I don't want to get these weird ass hackers on my case just because they think it's fun to steal my passwords. That's
Yeah.
why you want to stay a little bit anonymous.
Yeah, and I think honestly, in reality, in this space, there's very few people who are truly anonymous. I mean, you're putting funds in and out somewhere. Somewhere, someone's KYC'd you, usually, right? Like, so if you dig deep enough, most governments, I know my country, they want to get their cut. So when if I'm taking out funds, profits, I don't know what that's like this year, but in the past, when I took out profits, they came out of a large exchange. They knew who I am, right?
It goes back into your bank account, so they're like, hey.
Yeah, exactly right. And as time goes on, obviously that's become different than it was 10 years ago. So just kind of changing gears, speaking about more of one of the newer sort of projects you've jumped on board with, and you were someone talking about this in our group chat a little while ago, and we all kind of looked into it. I didn't make the cut for the whitelist on this one. That's okay, but it's cool to see you join the team. But I want to hear a little bit about how you found the Evolve team and kind of what you're doing there, and maybe a little bit about the project for people who aren't familiar.
Yeah, so Evolve is a Web3 brand, I can say. It's starting out as a brand, and they're here to how do you say, democratize. Sorry, my native language is not English. Democratize digital fashion. And so, without sort of spoiling or giving away too much there, they're really working on a bunch of stuff to help creators create and get involved with the digital fashion space. And so, how I got involved with them is that the founder, Raul, or Thunder on Twitter, and I worked together at Media.Monks for many years. And yeah, like we were always working together, pushing forward the Web3 narrative also to our clients and stuff. And basically, Raul went his own way and started building this project. And it's such a massively interesting group that is working on that. It's from other big agencies, bigger fashion brands, like people that you would recognize and know, and their companies that you would know. And so when we started talking, and I was like, yeah, I think within the team that you have right there, I really like what I'm doing at Rebels. So I definitely want to help see what I can do with creation and AI, and see how I can help you activate your brand and your community there a little bit. And so we haven't gone in too deep more in what that could mean, but I can also sort of imagine that would also involve brands maybe at a later stage. And connecting brands and communities and creative, that's sort of the triangle that I want to play in the Web3 space. So to me, at this point, that brand and that project that they're building, yeah, I find it massively interesting.
Okay, and then the frequency pass was sort of the genesis mint that's going to allow you almost like a membership to continue on being involved with the project. Is that sort of the idea behind it?
Yeah, so the frequency pass, that is more what he tried to do is sort of curate the first audience that is like what we have with Rebels, and we have our little sub communities in there. Those are the people that always really come together, and like we have the Buckethead Camp token, and that means something, and you can use it to do snapshots and then sort of attach like exclusivity or mints or stuff like that to the snapshots. That is basically the idea behind the frequency pass for Evolve. But that doesn't exclude anyone from what the project further is building, because he's openly talked about his PFP collection that is coming out, and the different fashion collections that are also going to be attached to that. I'll let them explain by themselves and how that will work and what that would entail. So it is just like getting the first part of the community up and running and engaging with the community, learning from them, seeing how to get them involved before just blasting a large collection out there, because this group is really genuinely involved with building this as a company and as a business too. And they understand that the community actually needs to be an active part of what they're building. So, coming back to what we just talked about earlier, Web2 companies trying to figure this out. Well, this is a way of figuring out how to engage with your community without it becoming about, the collection, people start flipping. And then, what is it actually about? Is it about people that are not genuinely interested in your project, but are there for flipping? And because they see the price come up, everybody's enthusiastic. And then when something happens, everybody's dumping on the project, which you see happening now with Doodles and all of the others. Or are you more strategic in trying to sort of get people involved because of your project? And yes, the NFTs are the token gates and everything that comes with the Web3 benefits. So I think that's what that project is more about. And that's also what I found in Rebels. Like, I don't know how you experienced it, but the way that Nas always explained it to us was, it is not a project with a massive amount of utility behind it so you can trade it and flip it. It was a project for himself and with some genuine intentions behind it. And that's why I bought it.
Yeah, and I mean, I initially bought in because the art was really cool, and I had a friend really, really hard show it to me one day, and I was like, "This looks cool," and I liked the idea of burning my night card and all that stuff. Like that was still kind of novel to me at the time when it was happening. Um, and yeah, for me, certain communities, it's not about what I bought in at and what the floor is now, whatever. It is actually about that community and what it enables me to do, and like even the connections and folks I've met, yourself, Nos, Big Bad Wolf, many others, and even what a lot of those people came in. They, a lot of the other projects we found out as a result of our Rebels family as well too. So I think that there's a huge benefit in that, and it seems like we've sort of become this community of creators, right? Like everyone is sort of creating something or doing something creative, and whether it's visual art or not, right? And for me, that's kind of what inspired me to do this podcast. It's something I had thought about for a while, and I eventually got to the point where I was like, I should just do it. Like what's the worst that can happen? So and I think that's the attitude that Web3 has, right? Is that just do it. If it doesn't exist, or if you think that you can make a better version, or you think you can provide something that's new, or or you think that you can have an impact, just go out and make it. No one's stopping you, right? And I think that's those barriers being gone is really what Web3 is all about.
But also there, right? Because you're pushing the boundaries here too. Because the easy way, or not the easy way, like and it's not disrespectful to anybody else, right? But the normal way is to go on Twitter Spaces, right? And you chose to see, hey, I don't know your thinking behind it, but you're posting things on YouTube and I think also Spotify, right? So
Yep.
it is there for a longer period of time, and you're building, let's say, a new collection of talks there. I think that is also an interesting approach, of trying to sort of figure out what your unique proposition is there versus someone else.
Yeah, for me, yeah, just to pull the veil back on my anonymity. See, I only speak English, and I'm still messing up here, so don't worry about it. You know, I have a young family. I have a daughter who's about to turn 9 months old. Me going on spaces for hours a day just isn't possible, especially a lot of times when they're maybe it's a project that's based out of I'm in North America, it's based out of Europe. The timing doesn't work out. It's the middle of the day for me, right? I have a day job that I have to keep up with. So for me, I found like I was missing a lot. I started to talk to more and more people in projects and find out that, more people than I thought were actually not in their 20s. They were in their 30s and 40s, and they had kids and they had families and they had a lot of stuff going on where, they felt like they were missing these as well. And that's why I figured, what if we can start collecting some of this information and learning from some of these people in a more easy to digest and sort of convenient package, right? And that's the idea, is you can come listen to this conversation anytime at your leisure, right? Go to the gym, in your car, wherever, and you can hear this. You don't have to be on Spaces at 4 p.m. on Thursday or whatever it's going to be, right? And that's what essentially made me start thinking about doing this. So now I got a question for you. So in a perfect world, the clouds open up and the big ray of light comes down and they say, Rem, you are now the king of crypto. You can make anything happen. You're going to decide where the space is going. What do you think should we be focusing on, or what's your dream, kind of space in, maybe 5 years down the road? Like if you were going to have a bunch of developers, the Ethereum Foundation comes to you and they say, what should we be working on? What should we be trying to make? What would be sort of your vision of the future of this space?
I think what we are really bad at is creating great seamless user experiences, right? Um, Now you sort of also have like the bitcoins and the ordinals and all of that stuff, and I got also back into that space, and I actually found it pretty terrible, because you have to like do lightning wallets. It sort of brought me back to 2017. And when I was sort of trying to talk to a couple of friends, and they said, "I like help us, set up wallets and everything." And I could just imagine that what I found trying to get my Ordinals wallet up and running, that's how they experience at Ethereum, Web3 space. So yeah, I feel their pain, right? So if we can figure out a way to make this experience of getting onto Web3 more seamless, like even a pleasant experience, and we can make it more safe, like you just also sort of tipped into, um, because it is a dangerous space if you don't know what you're doing, because you're basically exposing your valuables to people who are a lot smarter and more savvy than most of us are with our wallets and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I would really much root for a better experience there. And on the other hand, I hope that we get more companies or people or initiatives. I don't even know if they need to be companies, um, on it, that offer interesting experiences and gates to things that are genuine and that help us in a way that the Web2 space wouldn't be able to help us with. Um, I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, I think that the adoption part is still very difficult, right? For someone who's never done anything in this space to jump on and, download MetaMask, and what the hell is that? And why do they give me these words, and what do they mean? And I can't lose them. And how do I get any money into this thing? And, I was told that I was buying this NFT and it was point one, and now I have to pay gas fees. What's that? I mean, we really forget, right? As people who are in this space constantly, you forget from the outside that it's like, there's a lot of really confusing shit for somebody who's new to this space, right? Like, and if you don't have someone kind of guiding you, you're one click away from losing everything, right? And it's it's crazy, and we still see, like, I'm sure you follow it too. Like, it seems like every week on Twitter, there's some sort of new hack or some sort of new thing that's we're finding out about where people are getting, all of their assets stolen, and sometimes for some people, it's a it's some pretty big assets, right?
Well, there
The
was just this guy. I don't know his name, but he just lost like some board apes and stuff like that, like 90 ETH worth of of assets. I was like, dude, what? For me, what is all of that doing in one wallet? That's just to start with. But on the other hand, like, wow, I cannot imagine losing almost 100K worth of valuable, right?
Mhm.
That's like when someone breaks into your house, steals two cars, and the rest of your interior.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, and I see that too. Like, I'm a big advocate of using a ledger for all my my things that I find to be most valuable, and I don't have 100K worth of assets, but it blows my mind because I do a little bit of Etherscan and OpenSea, kind of looking at what people have and where it is, and I've seen people who have like a board ape as their Twitter profile picture, and you can click, it'll bring you right to their OpenSea, and then in that same wallet they're like actively trading out of it in and out. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, for me, I would have a single, not even just a wallet, but a ledger that was only that, and just have that one thing in that one ledger. And, maybe I would connect to my Twitter so I can have it visible there, and then it would never be connected to anything else ever again, right? Like, that to me would be how you would handle a high value asset, not have a wallet that you're essentially using as a hot wallet, right? Like, you're one click away, it's 2 in the morning, you're on Twitter, you click a link and suddenly it's all gone, right? Like, it's easy to happen, and it happens to people smarter and more experienced than people realize, right? It's not all new people it happens to, and often when they have high value assets, it is the more experienced people, and a lot of times you'll see often they'll write like a thread after of kind of what happened, and they always say I should have known better, right? And that's people with experience in this space. So you start bringing in completely fresh, fresh blood into the space of people who've never done anything in it, and that's going to happen 5 minutes in, right? And you've seen it, I'm sure others have seen it. They have these websites where they'll pretty much clone the code so that it looks identical to the real mint site of wherever you're trying to go to, and maybe they've made a lowercase l where an I was in the URL, and like there's these little tricks where if you just don't pay attention for a second, and suddenly you're somewhere where you don't want to be. So I think the security, and we sort of talked a little bit about that earlier as well, right? I think that's the focus is we're not going to onboard people with anonymous profiles and with the current way that things work, right? Even just to get someone to make a wallet, get funds into it, and make a purchase on OpenSea, that's a big barrier to entry for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I think also to that sense, like just to talk about the security side of it a little bit, I think it's very important that like people like us and the communities that have been in the space for sometimes, like we keep talking about this, and keep talking to people saying, hey, when you get in and you have a little bit of money in it, make sure you have three wallets, one your ledger that's never connected to anything. Like you have your hot wallet, that yeah, you can have some stuff in there, but you just do your OpenSea stuff in there and just do buying and selling. And then you have your mint wallet, your degen wallet, where you can, basically if if you lose that, it doesn't even make a difference for you. And there's a lot of people from all over the world, right? We're from Western countries, so also on the financial side, we're always pretty okay. But there's also a lot of our friends that come from countries that have a high inflation rate and stuff like that. And you definitely also want to be mindful of them because what is small for us might be pretty huge for them. And definitely also want to sort of help keep them safe. And because we all know that it's as soon as money comes in play, our minds change. Like we have the same thing. Like when we get into a project and things go really well, we get very excited and we get reckless, right? And it's always good that we then have the more grounded people around us. And like for me, and I think within the project, it's guys like Nas that are very well versed in security, and we have more people around us like that keep us grounded and keep us safe, right? And remind us um, to not get reckless with these things, because like we think we're pretty savvy with these stuff, but the hackers are the ones that do this day in, day out. It's their job to outsmart us all, and they're doing a pretty good job there. So let's also sort of keep that as a mission for ourselves.
Hmm. And yeah, the more I talked to Nos, the more I realized that anything I knew even less than I thought I knew. So it was, but he's a great guy, and he's very open, and he speaks in plain English, so everyone can understand. And I think that's what we need: people that have that knowledge and are sharing it in a way that's digestible by everyone. So changing gears from that, one last question for you. I've been seeing these previews of some different art you're working on lately. Do we have, maybe, is there like a new project coming from Rem, or is this just for fun experimenting with some new art? What's going on with that, man? I saw one for Big Bad Wolf the other day.
Yeah, no. So I'm just playing with that. I am working on a bigger project on the back of it, but I am not in a rush. Like it can take a year. I don't care. But I'm also not gonna sort of make people crazy around that, or I don't have any sort of whitelist for that and stuff like that. So, but that's not important. This thing, like I'm just collecting some wallets from the community. Like I actually have a list of everybody, so that's not even a thing. But just to have a little bit more engagement. And I saw some really cool stuff coming out now again from with the AI, and I have some interesting thing that I want to do there. And get it in the hands of our communities that actually post their wallet addresses there. Um, but I have to sort of figure it out, because there's something in this AI kind of thing that will make it unique, um, without being too cryptic there. But it's going to be fun. And on the back of it, of course, you guys know that I'm working on the Dali Nas project, or the Dali Rebels project, and that is still going. It's not dead, right? But I just kept it away a little bit because I also saw a lot of our active community members fading out a little bit, and it's logical, right? Because the market isn't there and the engagement isn't there, or but we also see a lot of people that went out, for some time to work on their real lives. We see a lot of them also coming back again on a regular basis. So I'm just trying to figure out with the Dali Nas project, or the Dali Rebels project. I'm just keep evolving it in the background. I'm just timing, what would be a nice moment to bring that out and have the free mint out for everybody. And at the moment, because it needs to then sort of also deliver a little bit of value there.
Very cool. Well, we're looking forward to it. I've enjoyed everything you do. I am part of the Dolly Nos, Dolly Rebels project. I have it in my ledger, man. I think it's cool, so I'm holding that one.
To be some sort of historical collectible kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'm just looking in that space. So it needs to be fun for people to collect, and it's
that's the most fun in this space, right? Like, I mean, I think a lot of folks have their sort of conviction projects that they really do think, with time are going to be still active in the space, are going to be maybe, maybe they are going to be the next one that blows up. Everyone has those in the back of their mind. Usually, if you see someone with one or two higher value, projects, then it's fun. That's great. But for me, the ones that are just fun and about community and that I just enjoy being part of, it's like it's almost just easier, right? Like because I'm not really, my expectations are not anything at all. So then when something happens, it's that surprise and delight moment, right? Of I wasn't really expecting anything beyond just art that I thought was cool, and then that if something more comes from it, that's awesome. But that's a great way to kind of end on, is that really should be the first thing that you're looking at is, why are you in the project? What's your purpose, right? Like if you're here because you love the community, maybe you're a big fan of people that are creating the things that you're seeing, and you genuinely like the art, then you're there for the right reasons. And then it doesn't really matter what happens if there is a price up or down, or a floor price at all, right? That seems to be a lot more fun, those type of projects, right? And we saw it with Rebels, and with some of these other projects. We're seeing a little bit of PA, price action change over the last few weeks, and people have feelings about that. But we see. I talked to community members there. I'm a member as well, and I talked to some of the people who've been there since the beginning, and they're holding a whole whack of them, and they've been really involved in following the project and everything Voltaire is doing, and those people haven't even budged an inch. They have their Genesis and all of their psilocybin and all that stuff in their ledger. It's not moved. It's not going to move. And there's a really strong base to that community. And I think sometimes with the recent events of a few different communities, and you'll see some people kind of get shook out, or they're selling at a loss, things like that. Like, you can't let that speak as that's the whole community feels, right? Because a lot of the core base of a lot of these communities haven't budged and are not going to budge, and those are the people that I'm looking to hear from, right? Not so much the people who bought in last week and are upset that it didn't go up immediately as they bought in, right?
No, but like, I get it, right? When you like, I'm also a PRL from the beginning. So my question, like when Fold came out to say, "Hey, community, what do you guys want?" Yeah, I definitely also sort of, want to get rid of the extra ballast in that what we all collected, because there's really no purpose to a lot of these things anymore. And I just want to get back to enjoying what we were doing, with Malek, with Junior, with Klaas, like all of these. It was just such a nice vibe that we all had, right? And it was basically not about trading and the money and all of that stuff. At least not for me. Like, for a bunch of people, it was, of course. That's why I also still have that whole set in my in my ledger. And I'm not planning on selling that just because there's some price action or whatever going on there. I don't care. Um, but yeah, especially the companies that are now turning into real businesses, like the Web3 audience, because they're in it with a different mindset. Then you sort of start building it as a company, and it sort of runs against a different drumbeat, right? In Web3, you need to deliver in 2 months. In Web2, like in reality, it takes a year, maybe 2 years to build it. What you're actually trying to build, and that just doesn't match, because it's basically, when you get back to the whole thing, it's high risk trading. If you would sort of see it as investment, right? And then these people get upset, and I get it, especially when you bought the top and you put in 10K or 50K. That's a lot of money, and people get upset because they don't see it coming back up. But like, do you actually also do that, reaching out to Tesla and Sony and Nvidia,
Mhm.
you know telling them publicly that they need to get their business together, and the market, get on the back of the marketing director and telling him to engage more and build more campaigns for the community so the stock price goes up.
Yeah, and I mean, and you don't really own the stock; you own the product, right? That's where people don't understand, is that you're not a stockholder. When I buy a PlayStation, I don't now own anything. I don't own a piece of Sony. I own that product, and so my PS4, I should call them and say, "Hey, PlayStation 5 is out now. This PlayStation 4 I got is worthless now. Like, this is crazy, guys. I paid $500 for this 6 years ago, right? Like, yeah, why didn't I get airdropped a PS5 to my front porch? Like, what's going on?" Yeah, and when you put it in those terms, it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but that's what a lot of people are doing. And there's a real misunderstanding between, yeah, being a stockholder and being someone who just is a consumer that bought a product. Really, is what it boils down to, right? And that's where I think people, are sort of having that trouble making that translation in their mind. And things like airdrops, like everybody wants everything airdropped for free to them all the time. Even like I was talking about with Nas, like even just the gas cost of doing that for these collections of 5 and 10,000 pieces, we're talking about thousands of dollars that a project is going to spend to do that. That money could be better invested in something else that'll benefit the project longer term, right? Even if it's only a few $1,000s, smaller projects, $4,000 or $5,000 could do a lot more for the project as a whole than it would, minting some additional collection and putting it in your wallet for you.
And I did airdrop the first Dali Nas piece of the collection to most of the holders in the beginning. But then back then the gas fee was like $1 or something, or $2. So that's doable. But now these days, if it's like $20 per airdrop, you can't just do that as a business.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And $1 times 10,000 pieces is still $10,000 that you really just spent on transaction fees, right? And
But then a claim, right? Like a free claim for
yeah,
people, and they only spend like $2 or something. That's what still makes it fun. That's also one of the reasons why I haven't put out any collections, because I just don't want a collection that is there to be a collectible, and not as much get in there and then have people trade it.
mhm.
Because I did a couple of the collections, just for fun, for the community. Like I had this collection called Spideys. I don't know if you have if you remember that, or if you were around. So it was basically I made a whole bunch of collection of like these cute little spiders, and we were just having fun with it, and especially like minting it for free, and it was like $2 per Spidey or whatever we made with it. And then everybody changed their PFP to Spideys, and we just had a little bit of a laugh from it. And then now it's not for trading, but then I accidentally opened it up, and there was like people actually minting it and putting it on OpenSea for a price, and then nobody was buying it. No, of course not, because that's not what the purpose was for that thing, right? It was actually for us. It was not for external traders that were trying to flip the thing. So I actually got people like like buying like minting five of them, trying to flip them on OpenSea. But like
Yeah.
that was not the purpose of that thing.
Yeah, I think people just see these have bots that just catch any new contract that's minting and they'll just mint it, right? And yeah, I remember I don't have one of the Spideys, but I remember seeing them. I think you did it through Nifty Kit, right? Like I remember hearing you talk about it.
Yeah,
Um
I was sort of experimenting with the Nifty Kit, because I thought it was cool so one of the things that I wanted to do for the community is sort of figure out what a good way is. So like we have a lot of artists in there, or people who want to be an artist, but they might necessarily not be savvy enough to or have the means to figure out how to set up a mint collection. How does that work in building a smart contract, even through the no code solutions, right? Like,
mhm.
what does it take? And so I went through the whole hoop with Nifty Kit, with Midjourney, and a couple of others. And there was actually some people in the community that I was able to sort of help, because I did it a couple of times. And yes, of course, you need to set up a couple of contracts. It costs a little bit, but I could avoid for some people to set up the wrong contracts, which would have cost them like about 30 bucks per contract. It might
Mhm.
not sound a lot, like like I just said, like for us in the Western world, but there were some of our friends that were from the eastern side of the world, for which 30 bucks is a lot of money. And so for them, it would be more of an investment. So we were able to avoid that. I was able to help them set up these contracts, and so they could actually start experimenting with that in a safer way. So
Yeah.
yeah, like we just tried to contribute, right, to the community a little bit.
For sure, and saving people from making those mistakes is huge. Like, $30 is it's not going to bankrupt me, but I'd rather spend that $30 on dinner than I would on a contract that I made a mistake on, right? So just finding that stuff out ahead of time is great, right? Now there's so many tools, right? Like I know you've been using Manifold, and they're doing a lot of cool things with Burn Redeem, and they're expanding that. And I'm not sure if you've looked into it. I'm just going to mention it on the podcast here because it's a really good tool. Thirdweb.com. It's a completely free tool that lets you run contracts. A little more involved than a Manifold, but still very plug and play and very friendly to people that aren't coders. And that's backed actually by C Ventures, which is Coinbase's investment side. So there's a lot of big players that actually built that site out, and it's very safe and easy to use. So there's more and more, options coming out there, and they're mostly free for people to start launching these contracts. Because up until a couple years ago, if you want to launch even just a token contract, you're hiring devs and you're having to go out and do all the legwork yourself, right? And it's like trying to build a house and you're going to be doing all the contracting individually and then putting the whole project together. It's a lot, right? Versus being able to go to a place where everything just kind of works and you're just sort of, putting your inputs in and it's spitting out exactly what you wanted. So it's great to see more and more things like that come online and help get people creating, right? With this taking away that barrier.
Yeah, exactly right. And the thing there is that these tools are not just tools, that are out there by some shady company. Like Nifty is a solid company. I work with them while building the marketplace for Gucci. So it's actually powered by Nifty Kit. Manifold built by Richard and the team, like very very respectable people in the space, in my opinion. There's a lot of really big artists on Manifold, including guys like I think even Blau is on there. I know the Aoki verse is on there. There's so many big projects that make use of that platform. So like I just said, it's not that it's like small shady businesses that do these things. You can trust these companies, in my opinion. Try it out. Obviously, always do your own research, as I have to say for our US friends in here.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, like the company that you just mentioned, it is really worth checking out to see if you can do something with it.
And it does put your mind at ease, when you do see, who's behind some of these different services for these type of things too, right? Because like I said, the idea of going out and just trying to find a dev a couple years ago, you'd find good devs and bad devs, and you'd find people who you made a payment and they stopped answering your messages, and that was part of the wild west nature of Web3 sometimes, and this is helping make it a lot easier to onboard. And I remember the burn redeem, the first time I saw that feature. I think they piloted it with Alpha Centauri Kid with his project. And that was really cool. I was like, oh, not only are you burning something to get something else, which I've seen with the Night Card and other projects that do similar things, CloneX, that's just another one. But you're burning and you're actually choosing what you're getting, and that was really cool to know. Like, oh, I can use this token actually, to redeem for exactly what I want, and I have multiple options. That's kind of neat too, right? So
Did you get it or not? Or
no, no, I wasn't in on that one, but I just watched I watched it happen. Yeah,
yeah, I was
but it
actually I don't know if we have time, but it was like a fun thing. I was actually on a business trip and I heard him talk about it on his Discord. I was like, oh, I so desperately want to get an ACK because I've been a big fan of that of him personally as an artist. And actually, it was like I was somewhere in Europe and it was 3 o'clock at night because he was on US time. And I actually went in there and like I didn't have any. I just had a little bit of money on my one of my Mint wallets, and I actually could just claim one of them. It was the what was it, like one of the experiments that he did, and it was actually performance art, right? What he did,
mhm.
and then we got so he actually made a joke towards Xcopy. And so we minted, I think, a Max Payne, but Xcopy was coming out with that collection at the same day. So he actually sort of made fun, like we also minted a Max Payne. And then in order to obviously not, disrespect the collection of Xcopy, we burned that into something else and then burned it into something else later again.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
yeah, no, I just
it,
want to say I think it's so important, that these types of artists do these types of things just to help us figure out, how fun this space can be.
yeah, and for me, I didn't really know who he was at that time. And actually, I remember where I was that night. I was going to a concert with my wife, and I got the message in our group chat. You were in there. I think Tiku, shout out Tiku. I think he was talking about it too. And I had never really known much about this guy. And I'm not typically the kind of guy who's going to mint something out of nowhere when I'm with my wife, half paying attention on my phone. So I just let it go, right? Because I'm like, I don't know what this is. Like, we post a lot of great stuff in that chat, but we post some stuff that who knows where it ends up. So I didn't bother with it. And then I kind of watched it play out, and it was really cool, even just to on the sidelines see what happened with that. Whereas it was the Pale Blue Death was his piece that sold for 200 ETH, and then it was burned, and then everyone could get a version of it. And everyone got excited because holy, what because I'm sure the speculation for a lot of people was, well, what if I become a holder of this project and it's worth a lot at some point, and then it kind of flipped to the Max Payne, and everyone, some people were straight up angry at him, right? I guess I saw it on Twitter. And then, he kind of revealed that, hey, we're doing this really cool thing, and you're going to be able to reveal for, a similar piece of art that's in different colors and shades. And, people started collecting them, and it was really cool. It turned into something really awesome that I would have loved to participate in, but the conditions, like you said, you weren't even somewhere ideal, but you sort of knew who he was already and were in his Discord. So there was some trust there. But for me, it was someone who I'd never really heard of before. I'm getting this link. I'm literally about to enter a concert venue. And I just kind of was like, you know what? I'm going to let this go. I'll see what happens tomorrow with this. Maybe this is a rug. I don't know who this guy is, or maybe it's something cool. And it ended up being something really cool. And then it started this wave of, I started seeing more of these kind of burn to redeem projects. There's a lot of people doing cool stuff with that right now. And Manifold's actually expanding the ability to do that and make it a little bit more cost efficient, because as you start, building out these collections, every one of those contracts costs money to deploy, right? So it does get costly when you start to get really granular with it as well. But yeah, that was really cool, to kind of be a front row seat for that. Awesome. Well, I think I probably took up enough of your. It's my afternoon, but I don't know what time of day it is for you. But quite a bit of your time here, sir, and I appreciate you coming on. And I think we really covered a whole bunch of different things that you got going on right now. And I'm sure if we talk again in a few months, there'll be a whole bunch of new things you're doing. So hopefully we'll have you back on again. But thanks so much for your time. I'm gonna plug your socials and everything in if people want to know where to find you. Because I think, not only are you doing a lot of cool stuff in our space, but even just the art you've been creating is amazing. And we kind of tease that maybe something's coming down the pipe in the future, and they can keep an eye out for that, because you're known to kind of just here and there drop these little pieces of things you're working on, and I always love seeing it on my timeline. So thanks so
Thank you so
much.
much, man. Thanks so much.